Good evening. This meeting is now reconvened. Reconvened at 5:01 p.m. Board members present are Trustee Dykar, Trustee De La Seca, Trustee Santos, Trustee Sung, and myself, Davila. I would like to ask everyone to please silence all cell phones. Please rise for a moment of silent meditation, and please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance and honors to the Texas flag. Cadet Isaias Galindo will lead the Pledge of Allegiance and the honors to the Texas flag. I will be introducing the pledge leader since Fur High School is one of my schools. Cadet Isaias Galindo is a senior at Abert L. Fur High School and enters his fourth year in the Junior ROTC program. He has distinguished himself through excellence in academics and Junior ROTC and extracurricular school activities. Isaias serves as the Cadet Battalion Commander for the Junior ROTC Battalion at Fur, and with a 3.87 GPA is ranked 20th out of the 210 senior students. Among his many achievements in the Junior ROTC program, Isaiah, is it Isaiah?
Isaiah, ma'am.
Isaiah, okay, I'm sorry. Isaiah has been awarded the Superior Cadet Medal, the Academic Excellence Ribbon, and the numerous Team Service and Achievement Awards. He is a member of the National Honor Society, Fur High School's cross-country team, and commander of the Color Guard team. Isaiah plans to attend the United States Military Academy at West Point. His goal is to pursue a career in politics and become the President of the United States of America. Woo! Well, lead us through the pledge first.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you so much. And don't forget about our school finance when you become president. We've also been joined by Trustee Scalar Jones. We recognize this month of October as National Bullying Prevention Month, and I'd like to ask Trustee Santos to read the proclamation.
Proclamation, Bullying Prevention Month, October 2019. Whereas, each October is National Bullying Prevention Month, a nationwide campaign to encourage people to become more aware of the serious consequences of bullying and to take an active role in its prevention. And whereas bullying and harassment are pervasive problems occurring at schools throughout our city, state, and nation, with 1 in 5 students nationwide reporting they were bullied at school. And whereas bullying and harassment cause lasting physical, social, and emotional harm to our children, and the trauma may contribute to long-term stress, low self-esteem, depression, and even death. And whereas students who are bullied or harassed are at much higher risk of poor academic achievement, absenteeism, and dropping out of school, and whereas the safety of students is always a top priority of the Houston Independent School District, and whereas all members of society have a responsibility to protect children from harm, especially in our schools, where students have a right to feel safe, welcome, and respected, therefore, be it resolved that we, the Board of Education of the Houston Independent School District, do hereby proclaim October 2019 as Bullying Prevention Month in HISD, in hopes that it may raise awareness and help end bullying and its painful impact on our children. Houston, Texas, this 10th day of October, 2019.
Thank you, Trustee Santos. Next, Superintendent priority items. Interim Superintendent Dr. Layton, we begin with the Superintendent's priority items. Colleagues, please hold your questions until the presentation is complete. We've now been joined by trustee Dr. Lita. Dr. Lathan?
No.
3 minutes?
Good evening. Tonight, trustees, we present to you approval of board monitoring update, presentation of goal progress 1, measure 1 and 3, goal 3, progress measures 1 and 2. Ms. Stevens?
Good evening, President Davila, trustees, and Superintendent Lathan. We have goal progress measures 1.1, 3.1, and 3.2 for the 2019-2020 school year. So we're starting on our this year's metrics now. So goal 1, as a reminder, is the percent of students reading or writing at above the meets grade level standard in grades 3 through English 2. We want to make sure that we're continuing to get a 3 percentage point increase up to 46% for the 2020 school year. For the progress measure 1.1, this is looking at the data on the district-wide screener, which is Renaissance 360, making sure we have a 3 percentage point improvement comparing spring to spring. So we will be providing you this information all throughout the year. This is the information on the BOY, or beginning of year. Then we'll have the middle of the year and the end of year testing. So as you can see, the target is based off of the spring testing, but we want to know where we are starting this year. So for the BOY testing, beginning of year, we are actually at 36% of our students at or above the 40th percentile, which Renaissance considers to be benchmark. That is actually 1 percentage point below where we started the year last fall, but it's 2 percentage points higher than where we started the year for the 17-18 school year. So this is reading. This does not include early literacy, so this is not your kindergartners. This is anyone in grades 1 and above who took the reading test. Both English and Spanish is included. So this is the English-only results on the reading assessment. We had 33% of our students at the beginning of the year at or above the 40th percentile, which is 1 percentage point below where we started the year last year. But it is higher than where we started the year in 17-18. And for Spanish, we are at 57% of our students at or above the 40th percentile, which again is a little bit lower than where we started the year last year. When you look at students with disabilities, they actually have improved each fall. We're now at 10% of the students at or above the 40th percentile on the BOY, which is 1 percentage point above where we were at this time last year, and another now 2 percentage points above where we were at the start of the 17-18 school year. So we're going to talk about how the Achieve 180 campuses are doing, and this is just a reminder now for the 2019-20, which campuses are in the different tiered supports. In the reports going forward this year, we're going to be providing breakouts for the Achieve 180 office, which are going to be the 33 schools that are in tier 1s, 2, or 3 supports. And then we'll do the Achieve 180 program, which are all of the campuses being served, including those with area support and light support, for a total of 54 schools. So here's how those different breakouts are performing. And we recalculated the 17-18 and 18-19 data to represent the campuses that we are looking at for this year. So for the 33 campuses in the A180 office, this is comparable data for their prior years. And you can see the A180 office is the green dot. They're starting at 14% of their students at or above the 40th percentile. The blue dot is the A180 program, which includes some of our schools that have now transitioned to their area support and the light support, and they actually are higher than where they started in the 17-18 school year at 16 percentage points. Now we're at 21%. So there's been an improvement for when you look across the whole program for campuses that have now transitioned to the lighter areas of support.
We've been joined by trustee Wanda Adams.
And now we'll move to Goal 3. This is looking at the percentage of students who are demonstrating at least a year's worth of academic growth for those students who had not satisfactorily passed the STAR the prior year. So making sure that we're showing progress with these students. So in order to do progress measures on this, we're using, again, the universal screener, and we want to make sure that students are increasing their performance by at least 3 percentage points annually, comparing spring to spring. But of course, we're going to be showing you data at the end of each testing window. So for 3.1, this is focusing on reading. This is, since we're starting at the beginning of the year, this is helping us identify who are those students that are going to need to be progress monitored throughout the year. So we actually, on the beginning of the year in reading, have identified that there's 50% of our students in either the red, which is urgent intervention, or the yellow, which is intervention. That is higher than we actually were last year, where at the beginning of the year we had 48% of our students identified as needing urgent intervention or intervention. When you look at students with disabilities, the 84% of our students with disabilities are needing urgent intervention or intervention, compared to 85% last year at the beginning of the year. And when we look at the Achieve 180 results, again, we have it for the Achieve 180 office, which are the 33 campuses. They have 75% of their students, that's 54 plus 21, 75% are in that urgent intervention or intervention, so we'll be progress monitoring those students throughout the year. For the Achieve 180 program, which is all 54 campuses, they have 67% of their students are in urgent intervention or intervention. And those will be students we will be monitoring throughout the year. And then that compares to the non-Achieve 180 program students, where we have 46% of the students in the urgent intervention or intervention who will be progress monitored. This is all for reading. And I want to note that the first progress monitoring window, so we can see how our interventions are doing, will actually open October 14th through November 1st. So these assessments were done for the beginning of the year. We are now starting into our progress monitoring because these students have now been receiving instruction interventions. So the next one is Goal Progress Measure 3.2. It's the same information, but now for math. So again, we want to show an increase of 3 percentage points compared to spring. But we have to start with where we are. So for the beginning of the year, we have 33% of our students who will be needing urgent intervention or intervention, and that is a 1 percentage point increase from 32% at the beginning of the year last year. So again, these will be the students who will be progress monitored this year. And for students with disabilities, we have 70% of our students who will be progress monitored in math, needing urgent intervention or intervention, and that's down 2 percentage points from 72% last year. And when we look at the Achieve 180 campuses, for those that are receiving Tier 1, 2, or 3 support, 53% of those students are going to be needing urgent intervention or intervention. For those, the whole program, there's 48% of the students that will be needing urgent intervention or intervention and will be progress monitored. And for the district non-Achieve 180 schools, 30% of the students are in urgent intervention or intervention. And that is our monitoring report for this month.
Questions for my colleagues? Trustee Sung?
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Dr. Lathan, Ms. Stevens, for this presentation. I guess I'll just start at the top. So I see you've made some changes to the reports, I think, and I think if I'm understanding correctly, these are going to help us to better, more clearly understand what the data is telling us. So thank you for your work, as always, on this. Let's take a look at page 4. So this is our first school progress measure, students reading at or above benchmark. So not a surprise that we saw a little drop from the end of the year last year, right? That's that summer slump.
Right.
I'm wondering, we've seen a drop year after year on the number of students participating on this beginning of the year assessment. So I'm curious about that because, Dr. Lathan, you have been keeping us updated about enrollment, and enrollment has had a small drop, but not this much.
So as we looked, and then you can piggyback behind me, Ms. Stevens, and then Mr. Matwire, feel free to come up closer, actually, in case you need to respond. We identified students that, and so if you go back, now we're in year 3 of administration. The first year was like everyone took the assessment. Then year 2, we refined that, and now year 3, we're truly looking at the students who did not meet mastery as it relates to their EOCs or their STAR. And so that's why you're seeing that number decrease every year. Did I get that correct?
And really quickly, we've been joined by Trustee Jones.
Okay.
That's correct. If they've passed the Algebra 1, then they're no longer required to take math. If they've passed English 1 and English 2, they're no longer required to take the reading. Also, what has happened is the assessment company has helped us to decouple those tests, because what was happening in the prior year was if a student didn't need to take math but did need to take reading, they were having to take both. And so we've had them decouple it so that now if they only need to take reading, they don't have to also take the math. Is there anything else you want to?
And honestly, because we changed the criteria for who we were testing, there was some confusion at the beginning of last year where there were kids taking the test that didn't necessarily need to take it. So I think this year we got a better handle on who should be taking the test.
Okay, so let me understand. So the rule is for high school students in particular, right? If students pass their STAR for English 1 or English 2, or for Algebra 1, right? Then for the corresponding screener, they're just exempt. They're just taken out of the testing pool. And that's true for not just the progress monitoring, right, the midterms, but actually all of the universal screener.
Yes.
Okay.
How would that affect the data?
So then, that's part of why we're seeing
That could also be a reason why we're seeing a little bit of a drop, because those students who are actually performing well, especially in high school, they're not required to take this test.
Okay.
So this is only those students in elementary school, middle school, and those in high school who have not passed the math or the reading tests, Algebra 1, English 1, English 2, then those are the students that we're making sure are taking the screener. So that also can impact our results.
Right, not just that number down there, but also the results that we're seeing up in the graph.
Yes.
Okay, and then elementary and middle school students, at this point, all students are tested. They're not exempted. Is that correct? Okay. Okay, thank you for helping me understand that, and that makes sense. And I still think that, this goal progress measure is predictive, right, of the goal, because if we're hitting it here, even with some students that we know have passed their assessments, then, well, actually, the goal, if they've passed their assessments, then...
So for our actual goal on Goal 1, any students who've already passed Algebra 1 or English 2, English 1 and English 2, then hopefully they will be doing well and we'll be able to capture them if we still need them in there.
Okay.
Now, if they've already taken and passed, then they're not even going to be in the metric for English 1 and English 2, because the metric is only reading and writing from grades 3 through English 1 and English 2. So if they've already taken and passed it, they're not even in that metric anymore. Right?
That makes sense. That makes sense. Okay.
So we wanted to make sure that if we also are seeing the increase here, we should be seeing increase in performance for the students who are taking the STAR.
Okay. Great, thank you. That makes sense. And then moving on, okay, page 6, so we have our Spanish only. Now that's a group where we've seen an increase, and I'm wondering if this is reflecting like a larger number of Spanish-speaking students in our schools.
I know one of the things that happens even with the Spanish, when you're at a dual language campus, you're taking it in English and Spanish, and so I think that could reflect part of the number that you're seeing on the screen also.
Okay. Right, and this is a larger drop than we saw for students overall, right? It's pretty significant over the summer. So I'm wondering, is this surprising to us? Is it a concern, right? Versus a year ago, right, when we saw a relatively small drop over the summer for this group. Here we're seeing a larger drop, and it's above where we were 2 years ago, but below where we were a year ago. So what's our interpretation of this data?
And as I'm looking at it, once again, I think as you're looking at the numbers, even though you see a decrease, keep in mind we have a different group of students who are making up this particular subset at this time, because they start taking the Spanish in first grade and so forth, so that could be part of what we're looking at. And if it's in a dual language campus, of course you would have a different group of kids overall.
Yeah, well, that's why I first asked about the number of students, right? So it's certainly a different population of students. There's 1,000 more kids, 1,500 more kids. So.
And also students new to our district, so.
Yeah.
Right.
So I'm wondering if this reflects, an influx of immigration, right? A lot of new arrivals, possibly, right? And what are we doing to make sure that, if that's the case, that students are getting the supports they need? What they need?
I would say as we look at our instructional program, we're looking at meeting the needs, and as we think about the students that are coming to us from different countries, it's not just Spanish-speaking students, and so we have to make sure we're addressing the needs across various languages, and so we're looking at how we provide bilingual support and support to our English language learners. That's what we're looking at. When we look at the numbers, we're looking at the numbers, okay, we're at 50%, 57% here. What are we doing across the district to provide those supports to our multilingual department? And so part of that has been professional development, not only for our principals, but for our teachers, and also the teams that are supporting our various campuses.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so the next page, page 7. So for students with disabilities, you've already commented, that this is an increase. I'm noting that the number of students being tested has decreased through, and I'm wondering, is that reflective of the numbers of students with disabilities, or is it possibly higher performance so that you have more students with disabilities who are out of the testing pool for the reasons we've discussed already? What's driving that change in the number?
And it could be a number of different factors. For example, I think you kind of hit on one. The schools are getting a better idea when they go to the ARDS who needs to be taking the test and who may not need to be taking the test and so forth. And then once again, we do have kids that are exiting out of the program. But I think the main thing is the schools are getting a better handle, because when we first had Renaissance, it's like everybody needs to get on regardless. And I think now we're getting a better direction and information to the campuses, and they are identifying who needs to actually take the test.
Okay, so whether they be screened or not depends on the specific IEP.
Right.
When you're saying that
when they
that's...
have ARDS,
okay.
yeah, the campuses are aware of the ARDS, and they determine at that time if a student should take the Renaissance or not.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and then page 9. So Ms. Stevens, if I understood your presentation, then in the past, when we've seen these reports, they've been hard to interpret because schools come in and out of the Achieve 180 office, right? So here, you're saying that row 1, right, the Achieve 180 office, those 33 campuses, you went back and so the data that for the students or the schools that are in the Achieve 180 office this year, you went back and it's the same 33 campuses.
Yes.
Oh, that makes it so easy. Thank you. And then similarly for the Achieve 180 program, right, those 54 campuses, you went back and pulled the data from the last few years.
Yes.
Oh, thank you. I think that's brilliant. Okay. Okay, so then, okay. So then, if we look at our start of the year data this year versus a year ago, it's remarkably consistent, right? So it's 14% for the Achieve 180 office, it's 21% for the Achieve 180 program. And the good news there is that we're not going backwards, but I guess we'd like to see the gains that students make during the year be a little stickier over the summer, right? So we'd love to see this, move up a little bit more. I'm wondering, what are we doing? Are we considering any of the opportunities afforded by House Bill 3 to extend instruction? Kind of what you're thinking about that, Dr. Latham?
As we start working on our math and literacy plans, and if you recall, we discussed this, I think, last Thursday. Throughout this school year, we'll start working on the plans really for full implementation for 2021. But throughout this year, we will offer some other extended opportunities during breaks for various types of camps and enrichment opportunities for students. So we are thinking about that and extending the school day or extending the school year so there are opportunities for students to be more engaged, especially as we start thinking about next summer, providing more opportunities. This past summer, if you recall, students had an opportunity not only to participate in summer school, but they had an opportunity also to participate in enrichment courses. So if they attended summer school in the morning, they had an opportunity in the evenings to go to a fine arts camp, athletic camp, photography camp. They had different opportunities because we don't want to penalize students that need the intervention support. And so we're going to look at doing more of that also for next summer.
That's great. I remember we had this really beautifully bound book advertising all of our summer programs. Did we get good participation on that this past
We did, because it was a limited number of sessions offered. So the goal for next summer is to extend that so that we have more weeks and more opportunities for students, but we have also more locations across the district so that students can actually participate in their own neighborhoods or at least within the cluster or quadrant of their community.
That's great. And is House Bill $3 going to pay for that?
We'll pay for the stipends for teachers and for other staff members to support students. That's how we'll utilize those monies, and then other materials and things that we need.
Okay, great. That's good to see. And I just want to call out that where we did see a drop from a year ago is in the non-Achieve 180 office. So I just want to note that the good thing is with House Bill 3, right, that gives funds that can be used for students who need it everywhere, right, which is great. Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on to Goal 3. Okay, we're on page 12. Actually going back to page 11, right, this goal progress measure is looking at students who were behind grade level, right, identified as needing intervention. And we want to make sure that they're demonstrating growth, like at least a year's progress, right? That's kind of the point, right, is to match the screener data in 3.1 with the goal, the intent of the goal, right, for Goal 3. So I'm kind of curious, like, why we can say whether we're on track or not here. Are we saying we're not on track because there's been an increase in the number of testers designated as progress monitored? Is that the basis?
That was the basis. We really haven't started progress monitoring to be able to say then, are those students actually growing? The only reason we put not on track is because we just have more students this year, or a larger percentage of our students that are being identified as urgent intervention or intervention. So that was really where that came from. We are hoping that after the first progress monitoring window that we will start seeing students making progress and that we will be on track to meeting our goal.
Okay. I mean, to me, like, to be fair, right, like every year the number of students who are, behind grade level, right, or is a new group of students every year, right? Because we know kids move in and out of that group too, right? So I would, we want to make sure that they're making progress through the year, but to me, like, the year's barely started, right? So how can we say really that we're not on track for that? Okay, but yeah, thank you for noting that there's been an increase in the number of testers that are designated progress monitors. And of course that, goes back to the summer slide conversation, that affects Goal 1 as well, right? Okay, thank you. And I think, same thing for the math, right? Slide 16. So there again, we're saying we're not on track just because there's a slight increase in the number of students designated as progress monitored.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to be looking forward to seeing progress on these at the next monitoring interval. Okay, thank you.
We are too.
That's all my questions for now. Oh, no, wait, I did have a question. Sometimes this data is presented broken out by grade level, right? So we can, and I think Trustee Lita is the one that usually asks about this, where you can see the difference between elementary, middle school, and high school performance. I just want to know, I always find that helpful when that's shared. I didn't miss where you have that presented somewhere in the monitoring report, or?
No, we did not provide it in this one, partly because this is the beginning of the year and we're not dealing with the monitoring yet. But for the monitoring report coming forward, we can break it out by elementary, middle, and high school if we need to.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Trustee Dyker?
Wrong button. Okay. I have a long list. Bear with me, but I've got really 3 big buckets, but lots of questions within each bucket. So the first big bucket that jumped out at me, and I'm looking at the bigger packet, and I just want to clarify my understanding that this tests all kids grades 1 and above, but the kids who are meeting our goal, we didn't test in high school?
If they have already passed the Algebra 1 test, there's no reason to actually put them on a math screener because they've already passed Algebra 1. If the students have also passed English 1 and English 2, again, there's no reason to put them on a reading screener to see where their deficits are because they have already passed English 1 and English 2.
And am I correct? We didn't always do this?
That is correct. In the first year, we put everybody on it. And it didn't make sense for some of the high school students who had already, they're in, geometry or calculus or pre-calc, and we're putting them on a math screener. So we decided that.
So first year, we tested everybody. The second year and this year, we took that group of kids out.
Yes.
So from consistency of data, because I heard one of my colleagues start to chime in with the same question that was in my head, how is this potentially impacting the quality of the data over time? But yes, comparing year 3 with year 1, it could a little bit, but between year 2 and year 3 and henceforth, it should be consistent, correct?
Should be, yes.
Okay. So page 3 of the second packet, if I'm looking at this correctly, and I'm going to say our Spanish testers, it doesn't mean they're native Spanish speakers, there are Spanish testers. They're currently exceeding our goal, right? But what I started to want to understand, in each of these populations of kids, the English testers and the Spanish testers, and bear with me here because I'm going to break down into subgroups. So on the English testers, I want to know how our native English speakers are doing compared to our not native English speakers. And then on the Spanish testing group, how our native Spanish kids are doing compared to our non-native Spanish kids. Because these could be kids that Spanish is their second language, but don't speak English, correct? On the Spanish taking test?
It could be kids who are in a dual language program whose first language may be English.
That are taking it in Spanish.
Right, that is possible.
Okay. But it's their second language, not their first language.
Correct.
If they're an English speaker, okay.
So I just want to clarify, in the English and Spanish combined data, if a student took both assessments, we pulled out their highest of the 2 scores.
Okay.
When you have the English separate and the Spanish separate, we are showing if they took both tests, their results are going to be in both.
Okay.
So if they took both an English and a Spanish, they will be in the English testers, they will be in the Spanish testers, but in the English and Spanish, we took the highest of their 2.
Okay. But it's still, breaking down. I want to look at, in the aggregate of the district, the subpopulations, because I just don't feel like this, with such a diverse student population, I don't feel like this tells the complete story of how our students are doing, since we don't have the tests in all the different languages, right? We only have them in the 2. And then the other thing within that, and this is where I'm going to get a little further down, a student is considered continuously enrolled if they have been with us for how many consecutive years?
So according to the state definition, a student in grades 4 and above who have been with us for the prior 3 PEIMS submissions
Okay.
is considered continuously enrolled.
Okay.
If a student is in the 3rd grade, then the prior 2 PEIMS submissions,
Okay.
they are considered continuously enrolled.
Okay.
That is a state definition for accountability.
Okay. So if we were to disaggregate, because I've now created 4 categories, right, from these 2. If you were to disaggregate further and look at those 4 categories and divide them up into who was continuously enrolled and who wasn't, what story would that tell? Does that make sense?
Yep. So if that's going to be a referral to submit to us, then
Yes,
we can
please.
pull that data.
Yes, please. Because this is, I mean, we should be looking at 30,000 foot level district-wide, but again, with such a diverse student population and, you know, in any of these categories that I'm talking about, we're not just talking about a couple of kids, we're talking about big groups of kids that are on multiple campuses. And, you know, it could be that there's this, you know, the kids who are continuously enrolled, you know, we can make a presumption that if they are English speakers taking the test in English and they've been continuously enrolled, that they would outperform a kid who, you know, speaks Arabic but is taking the test in English and has only been here for a year. You know, like I want to see what those gaps are for us. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. To make sure we're asking the right questions about all of our different populations, just in the name of equity, to make sure that they're all, you know, resources, time, talent, and financial should be appropriated where those kids are the furthest behind and need the most. Okay, so then, and I have a similar sort of question on the special ed group, special populations. This would be, hang on, I'm looking at 2 things at the same time. This would be page 7 of the PowerPoint presentation. And my colleague, you know, we're moving in the right direction, but we're obviously going really slowly. There's such a broad range of, you know, special, you know, needs populations when it comes to learning. You know, is this telling us the right story when it comes to our dyslexia students compared to, you know, that student who is wheelchair bound and nonverbal, right? You know, are we looking at this in too much of an aggregate? Would it tell us a different story if we broke it down a bit? And I don't know what that would look like. I'm just telling you it's a question that's in my head of what does it look like to make sure we're zeroing in our resources in the right places and actually knowing that, you know, as a board, when we're approving those resources, that it's getting the ROI in that space that we're looking at. Does that make sense?
So I know that the special education department and the special ed chairs and everyone is looking at their individual data and they're making sure that they're addressing the needs of their individual students. From a district level, we have not done it by handicapping condition. If you want us to disaggregate the data by handicapping condition, that would need to be a referral. Okay. It's not something we have done, but I know that at the campus level and at the Department of Special Ed, they're obviously looking at their data for the individual students, making sure that they're getting the needs that they're dealing with, you know, what their IEP says that they need to have. And this is a way to help monitor at the beginning of the year how the students are doing and then what they need to do to be progress monitored throughout the year.
And I don't need school level or student level, but what I guess I get curious in these when there's so much in the aggregate, we could have one group that's doing great, but another group that's going down, and then they average out, you know, into this middle, right?
That's always the case when you aggregate data.
Correct. On page 9 of the PowerPoint presentation, and my colleague pointed this out as well, and this raises a concern for me when I look at our non-180 schools taking a disproportionate drop to our Achieve 180 campuses. I worry about kids who are in those non-Achieve 180 campuses who maybe need those services that aren't getting the supports. How is this data being used, especially given that drop, to identify the students and the needs to correct this trend? It's not a trend, this 1 year.
So we look at information based on the individual schools. We look at that across school offices and across the areas. And so we're drilling down to see what's going on. As you think about from an accountability standpoint, we're looking at the supports that individual campuses, individual students down to classrooms need. And so that's part of the work between the academics department and the school's office of ensuring that we are not leaving the non-Achieve 180 campuses behind.
So in all of this, and I guess what I'm getting at for an answer with my questions of disaggregating is which of our student populations are struggling the most, and which of our student populations in the aggregate are, meeting or exceeding our goals. Does it make sense? And I mean, and if you have an answer for that now, or if you need to send the data later, that works too. Okay. And then I was looking at, so on page 7 of the bigger presentation, so both on goal 1 and goal 3 on the superintendent's response, I love seeing, here are all the things that the administration is doing, recognizing, whether it's we've exceeded a goal or meeting a goal, these are the things we're doing that are supporting that, or if we're not, these are the things that we're putting into place. How do we know that these are the right solutions? Like, what kind of root cause analyses are done? How do we know we're targeting our time, talent, and financial resources in the right ways? How do y'all monitor, put this bullet point 1 in place at these schools? This is how we know that it's achieving the results that we intended it to achieve.
So we meet quarterly as a team with individual school offices where we actually go school by school and we look at the portfolio of schools. We look at their, like I said, their accountability information. We look at their Renaissance data, benchmark data, snapshot data. We look at that. We look at the programs in place. We look at their tutoring. So that's part of the day-to-day work that we do to see what's working, what's not working, and that's how we make decisions to add supports or take supports away or move personnel from campuses.
Have you found in that process that there are any trends for particular populations district-wide, not just on a school-based level or an individual level, but bigger buckets that need a particular resource, or that we haven't missed something in the process of what they needed, or at the same time, maybe a population of students that something's been put in place that really has exceeded the expected results of putting that program or support in place?
Like I said, we look at that and then we make decisions of particular resources if we need to, based on the data from one particular campus to another campus, or from grade level to grade level, if we want to add an additional or need to add an additional resource to a particular campus. Every year, it varies based on the individual school's data. And then, like I said, we make those decisions based on what the data tells us. So we really are making data-driven decisions.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Lita, followed by Trustee Jones.
Thank you, Madam President, Madam Superintendent, and Mrs. Stevens. Back to page 6, I know some of the questions were already asked. I just want to dive in a little deeper. On this, the beginning of the year for this group, the Spanish-only percentage of students reading level, it's substantially lower, yet there's more students, and I think it was mentioned that perhaps there's a new group of students that are in dual language programs. And my question is, for example, if you're a fifth grade student in a dual language program, do you take both tests? Do you take the English? Mr. McGuire.
At this time, if you were in fifth grade, you would basically be taking the English test. You wouldn't be taking the Spanish test at this time. It would be mostly it would be third and fourth grade students.
Okay, so the students that are reflective on this lower beginning of the year percentage, 57, will be the students in dual language programs and bilingual ed programs?
When I said third and fourth grade, it's also first and second grade would also be taking it also in the early.
Okay, and they're mainly in bilingual classroom, would you say so?
Most of them would be bilingual classrooms, but there would be substantial dual language campuses that would be taking it in both languages also.
Okay, all right. And there is a larger number of students taking this test. I see the numbers right there at the bottom. Okay, that was just for clarification. Back to page 12. On the reading, there is a substantial increase in urgent intervention from 30% to 32% from last year to this year at this time. Yet, I think you mentioned, Ms. Stevens, that there was more students testing, but there's actually less students testing. Is that correct?
I didn't say more students testing.
Okay. So there's less students testing, but there's less students testing, but a higher need for intervention.
Yes.
And can you share with me what do you think or some of the reasons for that? Or interim superintendent?
I think one of them, definitely we think about students regressing during the summer, because remember they're coming back, the summer slide, so that could be part of it. The different groups of testing, students that we're testing, could be also a possibility.
The students that we're testing.
The makeup of the various students that we're actually assessing for the test.
Was it fair to say that perhaps there's more students that are recent immigrants that are being tested in this group?
I don't know if we have that information.
No, I think what we're basically saying is because of the criteria who test, especially at the high school level, you may see a larger percentage because kids who may be Tier 1 and Tier 2 would not be included in the denominator. So therefore, you have a larger percentage of kids who may seem to be urgent intervention. And I'm just glancing up there right now, but if I took the actual number and said, okay, 50% this year, that's right around 72,000, or maybe a little bit less than that actually. But if you take the actual number, I'm not sure if you got more numbers of students in those categories or just a higher percentage because your denominator has changed.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, because the denominator is different. You have a less number of students, so it may just
Increase
the percentage. Okay, that makes sense. I see what you're saying. Okay. Yeah. Okay, on page 16, again, this has shown a steady increase every year in terms of students in intervention with math. I'm a little surprised because there's been phenomenal growth with math and the Achieve 180 schools in our district, and in particular in algebra that I'm very proud of. And so I just find this surprising. And again, this is less students testing, but also a larger group that needs urgent intervention that's been steadily increasing.
That's true, but it's 18% of 133,000 versus 17% of 140,000. And when you look at 17 and 18% of students being at urgent intervention in math compared to 30 and 32% of students needing urgent intervention in reading, we are making more progress in math. Yes, it went from 16 to 17 to 18, but when you look at the percentages of students who need urgent intervention, it's much higher in reading than it is in math. So we have made progress. Our students are doing better in math. You can see 54% of our students are at or above the 40th percentile. Last year it was...
It actually went down from 57 to 54.
That's true. And this year it's 54, last year's 56, it was 57. But compared to reading, it's much higher.
Yes, but we don't want to compare it with reading because that's apples and these are oranges. So,
And let me go back to what we were saying before. Although you see 57, 56, 54, keep in mind, kids who are probably being at 54 category were no longer being tested because they've already passed algebra, so they're not going to be in the denominator. So in 2017-18, those students would have been in the denominator, so you would have had more high-achieving students taking the test that necessarily did not need to take it.
but that, just in the reciprocal of that denominator formula that you're mentioning, but then that the urgent intervention would also be reciprocal and it will be decreasing if you have other students that are passing.
Not exactly, because once again, just imagine if I had 10 students and 5 of those students are higher achieving who have already passed algebra. If I pull them out, then my high achieving category is going to go down, but those other 5 students stay in, and it makes my percentage of the denominator go up. Mm-hmm. Because now I have 5 out of 5 that are actually low instead of 5 out of 10. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I understand. I understand what you're saying. But it's still a concerning trend to me. And also, can we have the breakdown that's very similar to the one in reading, where it has the 180 schools, the number, go to the next slide, the one that has 180. Let me see. Page 9. See how that's broken down by the different categories, columns, rows? You know, this is for reading, but can we do the same for math on the Renaissance results?
Okay, we can provide that.
Would that be possible, Ms. Stevens? I know you can.
If that's a referral, we'll...
I want us to see the number and the aggregate to see what's, get a better indication. Yeah. Thank you, Ms. Stevens.
Trustee Jones?
I don't have any questions. I just want to make sure I understand something. One, so this is for clarification. These aren't apples to apples, right? If the first time we tested people, we tested everyone, that means the kids who made hundreds, for example, if you factor them in for kids who made 50, that jumps it up to 75, right? But if we don't have those kids who make hundreds, then, right, that's like basic math. So I'm exasperated because, so now that we know that only the ones who didn't pass Algebra 1 or English 1, Algebra 1 and 2 and the English 1 and 2, so then we will have apples to apples the next time.
Right.
So anybody trying to compare them, you know what, I'm not even going to say that because it probably won't sound nice. Number 2, when people are asking about generalizations about races or grades, seems like a oversimplification of very diverse people. For example, not every Hispanic person is Mexican, right? So different people have different issues. And in addition to school, there are other issues, like from social issues, that may cause you not to be able to do stuff. You also have like different kids coming in. So the kids that used to be in first grade are now in second grade, and then other first graders are coming in. So I guess I'm exasperated because some people don't know that if you change the denominator, like the math changes. So, and also when you're having schools that are struggling or grades that are struggling, sometimes we make those corrections when we replace principals. Maybe it wasn't the right fit, or maybe a teacher wasn't the right fit. So I'm just exasperated that we think all kids in certain races, or at least based on the questions, have the same problems when they don't. Even as between, say, black people, different kids have different issues. And I would hope we would understand as trustees that HISD is extremely diverse, kids with different issues. Some are academic, some are socioeconomic, some are emotional, and here and there and everywhere. And so it's not a one-stop. So what works in one school may not work in another school. What works in one first grade class at one school may not work in another first grade class, right? Okay, so just let me know. I think January can't come fast enough for me. But I'm just going to be quiet right now. But it seems to me that people are asking questions that oversimplify races, they oversimplify grades, they oversimplify cultures, they oversimplify socioeconomic status, they oversimplify mental illness, they oversimplify staff, they oversimplify employees, and I just want for people out there in the listening public or the watching public to understand that we are coming up from where we were.
Trustee Villaseca, followed by Trustee Dygaard.
Thank you so much for the presentation this evening. I just have a few questions. If we could, I just want to make sure that, I know that we've been talking about this year some students, if they pass their EOC, or if they pass then they don't have to participate in the screener. But we're still able to account for the kids and other goals as far as CCMR and Global Graduate's concerned. Okay.
And they would be in Goal 1. They just aren't in the progress measure.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Also, a little curious to hear and learn more about the reading academies. I know on page 12 we have some information on reading. We've had ample discussion on Summer Slide, and one of the pieces that have come out of the HB3 legislation is this reading academy for educators that's going to take place, I believe, starting next summer. Is that right? Yeah.
Right, but the state was still waiting to receive information from the state as it relates to the academies, and there are people who, teachers and staff members previously that took a different academy maybe 8 years ago, what many years ago? About 10 years ago, that might be waived. So they might receive a waiver that they do not have to go through or participate in the reading academies. But outside of the state mandate, we still, remember, we're working on our reading and math plans that will also include training for principals and teachers.
Okay, good. So just when we get, I know you'll keep us abreast of the information once the plans are out. I'm just curious to hear what the philosophies are going to be taught, how this is, this is great that there are going to be these resources, how that aligns with what the plans are and the direction and what we do as a district as far as teaching reading to our kids, right?
And remember, the plans will come to you for approval. So we will present the plans to the board, and the board will actually have to approve the plans.
Okay. And then again, who's included in the academies and all that. But thank you. Okay. If we could go to the page on the Achieve 180 list, I know it's page 8. I just have some questions there. This looks a little bit different because I'm noticing that we have the area support, the light support. I'm accustomed to seeing Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3. So if we could you help me understand the difference between what's area support and Tier 3 support?
Yes. Dr. Adams, would you come up? And we can also, Dr. Adams, tomorrow, if you can submit it, we can put it in the weekly superintendent's update also that showed, remember, I think for the past 2 years, we've given you kind of a side-by-side, and it showed you what what each tier was receiving. We can also give you that one-pager also again, okay?
Thank you. Thank you. That would be helpful.
Good evening, fellow trustees, Superintendent Lathan. The way that we tiered our schools this particular year, we have a special group of campuses, which are the light support campuses, who have graduated back into their feeder patterns. Those are the campuses where some of the supports from Achieve 180 are kind of taken away from the campus, but we gave them the supports that would sustain the campus. The area support is the group of campuses who used to be in, some of them were in Achieve 180, but they moved into their feeder patterns, but they still receive the additional supports. And then Tier 3, 2, and 1 are same as last year.
Okay. Could you help me understand what would qualify a school to get into Tier 3 support for this year?
The Tier 3 support campuses are, some of the campuses are the campuses that were superintendent schools the first year, and then they moved into Tier 3 support. They got out of IR, but there's still some intensive support that those campuses may need. Also, some of the Tier 3 support campuses are the IR campuses that are under the Achieve 180 umbrella as well.
Okay, all right. So if we have a school that has moved into, as far as the accountability rating, into the bottom, I refuse to say it, the bottom of they wouldn't automatically qualify to receive the supports from Achieve 180.
She's referring to the year one F-rated campuses that are still a part of their feeder patterns without identifying the schools. And so they do receive some support through professional development. If you recall, they're going to be required to submit the targeted improvement plan that I sent to you several days ago. So there are some things that they'll receive through professional development, but not the traditional Achieve 180 support that we've previously afforded the other campuses that you see in Tier 1 through 3.
Okay. I'm just a little fuzzy on how that's, what's the determination for, what's in and what's out. From the outside looking in, I would assume that it would be look, if you're kicked into this realm and you have 80+% students that qualify for free reduced price lunch, et cetera, that you would be offered the same services and supports of the other Achieve 180. So I'm just a little confused at how that's determined, and just wanting to make sure all of our schools are fully supported with the resources that the board has allocated for this program. Sure.
Okay, so let's talk about that. I think it's a very good question. Right now we're starting, for example, with reviewing the targeted improvement plans. We're getting ready to start next week our quarterly reviews. What we're going to do differently for 2021 is if a school, by chance, they should not be, but by chance, when we receive our preliminary results, if those preliminary results show that they could possibly be an F-rated school, we will automatically assign them to Achieve 180. If you recall, our results are finalized in August, right around the time teachers are reporting back. Some of the traditional Achieve 180 supports, extended Wednesdays twice a month, the stipends, and so we're looking at other ways. So what these schools are doing on the staff development days or other days, they still have some extended time where we would pay a stipend for the professional development. So it's kind of a hybrid of support for 1920. And then as we move forward to 2021, we'll reevaluate who needs to continue to receive what levels of Achieve 180 support. So, like I said, I think about a school in your area. Yeah. That's one of the schools, like I said, we're reviewing their target improvement plan now. We'll be visiting with them, I believe it's next week. They are participating also in community of practices. So across the area, all of those F-rated Year 1 IR campuses will receive a community of practice visit, several visits throughout the year, similar to what the Tier 1, 2, 3 schools receive. So they have been receiving DDI support, the data-driven instructional specialist support. So they are receiving some things that you just traditionally haven't thought about that we've added not only to Achieve 180 campuses, but this year we expanded DDIS supports across all the other 5 areas that we have in the district.
Okay. All right.
So we're not just leaving them out there.
Yeah, I know.
Mm-hmm.
I know. I just wanted, to help me understand, how do you receive the full benefit and supports of something that's very important to us as a district, right? On a year-to-year basis, and understanding that it's changing and that we're tracking by looking at the different buckets we're in year 3 of implementation, I believe, of Achieve 180. So just being, us to have an understanding of how that's determined from one year to the next. If you get into this qualification, that you may receive some but not all, and it's not an automatic, but how is that determination made? And then it goes along the lines for wraparound service specialists as well.
Right. And wraparound service specialists, remember we're adding those, so many per year. And remember, we're adding those across the entire district. So wraparound service specialists, I know that first year was around Achieve 180 campuses. Yeah. Remember, every year we've added additional wraparound support, wraparound specialists to all areas of the district.
Yeah. Just want to make sure also, too, that we're able to have the flexibility. You're able to have the flexibility, given with what we've allocated, to make those calls in June when you get the preliminary results, to be able to do your job effectively.
and talking to some other districts on how they've handled some of the different, the situations with helping schools make sure that they have the maximum support. It sounds like they might be investing a little bit more, and I know we used to have more regular conversations on the implementation of Achieve 180, especially in year one. And at some point, I would be curious I would love to have another conversation on, is this enough? Are all the schools accounted for? What are are there certain areas that are helping to, as far as the different tiers are concerned, and I know you guys are constantly having those internally. I think it would just be helpful just so as we're going into next year's budget cycle. Thank you so much. Those are all my questions. Thank you. Trustee Nygaard.
Okay, so page 12 and page 16, I asked the wrong question. So or at least I didn't ask it in a way that gave me the answer that I needed. So what I thought was happening is the first year we tested everybody. After that, we haven't tested everybody, but what I hadn't considered is, this difference. So on page 12, for example, the difference between the 139 and the 134, those are all kids that would be in the green column if they had taken the test, right? Because we haven't monitored them.
I'm sorry, yes.
So the difference between 2018 and 2019.
Okay. 2017, 18?
No, 18, 19, and 19, 20. Because I'm thinking this actually shows us something better than it looks like it shows us, right? So the difference in those 2 years, that is presumably kids who we're not testing, correct? Even between those 2 years?
There's a 5,000 student difference.
5,367.
Some of those students may be ones that we had tested in 18-19 that we shouldn't have or they didn't need to have tested, and they're not testing now in 19-20.
Okay.
That could be some of them. I mean, there could be a number of reasons, and that's not going to be all of the reason why there's 5,000 fewer. That is one reason why there are fewer kids.
To believe it's the biggest.
Okay. I was going with it was all of them, because then the data actually is better.
Well, and that's what James was trying to say, is that 32% of 134,000 is actually going to be probably fewer kids than 30% of 139,000. So we've got fewer numbers of kids who are actually needing the urgent intervention and the intervention, just because we have fewer kids that are taking a test.
Correct. So what are other reasons why a kid wouldn't have been, why we would have fewer kids being tested besides the fact that they've progressed out of needing being tested?
Another reason was one that I had explained about the decoupling of the tests, that the test vendor had done it so if a student needed to take the reading test, they also had to take the math test. Now they've decoupled it so that if a student does not have to take the reading test, if they only need to take the math test. So they don't have to take both if they need to only take one. So that's another reason why some of them are lower.
But it's because they were doing fine in the English test, right?
Or what could have happened is if the student needed to take, let's say, the reading test in Spanish and the math test in English, they were being assigned both reading and math in English and reading and math in Spanish. They didn't need to take 4 tests. They only needed to take 1 test in reading and 1 test in math. So the company is now allowing us to decouple that. And they can take the reading test in Spanish and the math test in English, as opposed to getting assigned all 4 of them.
And before they were getting assigned all 4 of them.
So that's another reason. So there's several reasons as to why we might have lower numbers, and we've got a little bit fewer kids.
Okay. But fundamentally, the way this is being presented doesn't tell us the whole story, and the whole story is actually better than this looks.
Could be.
Right? I mean, I'm interpreting all of this. When I amalgamate everything we've talked about in the different conversations this evening about these two, the reading and the math ones, that are these charts that initially look concerning because it says we're not on track. We actually may be on track.
That could be the case if we look at individual student performance.
So is this then giving us the information that we need or not to be achieving our goal? This set of data, or should we be looking at a different set of data that is going to be more predictive of the goal?
So this is the data I have. What I'm providing is the data that you all have requested and that I've got and that I'm giving you.
Okay.
Because what you were wanting was a progress measure for STAR. What we have is Renaissance. We have gotten better at identifying who needs to take the test. We've gotten better at the implementation of that. But I can only report what I can report. I can only tell you the results of the 134,000 kids that took the test this year. I can tell you the results of the 139,000 kids who took the test last year.
Okay.
So as a progress measure, I'm providing you the data that I have available to me.
Okay.
If you want to change your progress measure, if you want to look at something different, that is a conversation you as a board are going to have to decide. Do you want a different progress measure? This is the data I have for the progress measure that we have available.
You would know better than I would. Are there other ways that maybe we should consider measuring it that would be more predictive of the goal than what we've asked for?
I believe this is still going to be predictive of what we've asked for because this is still telling you for 134,000 of our students, how did they do at the beginning of the year?
Okay.
Do we have students that need intervention? We need to give them support. They're not where they need to be, and we need to move them up because if we're expecting them to get 3 percentage points higher on the STAR, then we need to identify who's in urgent intervention, then we need to address their needs and move forward. The progress monitoring that we will be giving you after the progress monitoring window will identify if our interventions have been successful.
Okay.
And if not, then we retweak it and we continue to address the needs of those kids so that we continue to make sure we're showing progress. If we are showing that we've got 36% of our kids on or above the 40th percentile, then that means that those students don't need intervention, but they need good, strong Tier 1 instruction. And they need to continue to be doing well so that they can pass the STAR test, which is what your Goal 1 is based on.
Got it.
So this is the information that I have available to tell you how our students are doing at the beginning of the year in reading and in math.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate that a lot.
Sure.
Trustee Sung? Thank you, Madam President. So I went and pulled up our monitoring report from a year ago, last October. By the way, the monitoring reports and the presentations are getting a lot stronger. It's really evident when you go back a full year. So thank you again for your work on these. And by the way, we weren't on track either for Goal 1 a year ago, and we still made Goal 1. So I don't think we need to panic. And especially as has been discussed with Goal 3, this is just where the kids are, and then the point of Goal 3 is to make sure that, whoever needs help, is getting the help this year. So I think we're going to see a lot more when we get the progress monitoring. But one question I do have is, I was looking back at the strategies that that reported a year ago, right, and the strategies that we've reported this year, right, in the superintendent's response. And they're written in different ways, right? So it's not evident to me just from comparing them side by side what's new this year. So I guess my overall question here is, what are we doing that's different this year that's going to help us make the growth that we know we want to see this year? Because every year you want to keep making progress, and it's hard to sustain progress. And these are challenging goals that we've set. So my question, Dr. Lathan, is what among the strategies we're trying this year are new? Or are we working to implement with more fidelity? Thank you.
Number one, working to implement with more fidelity. That's a biggie as we think about over 280 campuses, ensuring that we are implementing with fidelity. Also based on the data, professional development, strengthening and definitely the sheltered instruction training, and really professional, not only monitoring with fidelity, but our professional development. So not necessarily doing things differently, it's just truly enhancing what we have. We have a number of resources available, not only for our principals and teachers, but also for our students, but ensuring that we're getting those resources out to the campuses, more visits out to the campuses to monitor implementation. And so those are things that we're looking at and we're doing across the district this year.
Okay, thank you.
Trustee Santos?
I'll be quick. Thank you, President Avila, Dr. Lathan, Mrs. Stevens. The presentation is excellent. And I just want to say that for the teachers in the boardroom, Mr. Santos, Mr. Dewey, y'all all know at the beginning of the year assessments, there's so many variables and there's so much going on at the beginning of the year that the data isn't always all there. So as educators, we kind of know, like, okay, it's going to get better. So the one thing that all educators in the room know is that there's no supplement for good, strong instruction. And you said it earlier, Mrs. Stevens. Like, there is just, we have to have strong instruction. And in our last meeting, we talked about student outcomes, and the only positive thing about STAR that they took away from, which was a short answer response question. And my question is going to be directed to Dr. Lathan, because she knows I was a former English teacher, and we cannot teach reading without teaching writing. So that's my question is going to be, and I know that it's going to have to start next year, but as far as writing portfolios are concerned, how would that look, and or how can we start that?
So one of the things that as we plan and prepare the literacy plan that we will present to the board for approval, it will incorporate writing. But there are some things that we're doing this year as it relates to writing around professional development and support. But as it relates to actually the portfolios, we can build that into our plan and identify the grade levels. If you go back when we first started the goals and discussions around goals, I want to say 3 years ago, I think that was also part of the initial discussions, if I'm not mistaken. And we looked at some various surveys and looked at pulling various rubrics, and I can even recall 3 years ago actually sharing with trustees an example of that. So those are things that we're going to we can revisit and make sure that we've incorporated and it's in black and white into our plans. And also, if I'm not mistaken, from reviewing the initial components of our district improvement plan, we've built that in and addressed that.
Thank you, Dr. Lathan. And I just want to also not discount the kids that have passed the STAR exam. I mean, our kids should be writing. They still should be writing. They should still be reading. They should still be mathing. So it's just, where are we meeting where are we meeting them? So are we giving our kids books that they love to read? Are we giving them cultural competency? Like, what are we teaching in their what they like, so we can attract them more. I mean, I know that that's not part of our goal progress measure, but when you differentiate instruction inside of a classroom, I know that I had a reading library that had everything in it. So where are we there?
So ask Ms. Rodriguez or Ms. Gordillo if you want to address that as it relates to the classroom libraries that we have for Literacy by 3, Literacy in the Middle, Literacy Empowered, to talk about the variety and options that students have. You on the other side.
Is it on? There you go. So good evening, trustees and Dr. Lathan. So yes, we have literacy by 3. So all our classrooms at the elementary level have a personalized library, which we launched, I think it's now 4 years now. And so with the literacy plan, and as we do this relaunch of literacy with the intervention plan, definitely access to books is high priority. So we'll be looking at the number of books in the classroom, taking inventory of that, and seeing if there is a need to reboot some of those classroom libraries. We also have, all students have access to MyOn, which is a digital platform where books in a variety of language are available to students, and that is available to all students in HISD. We have competitions within the district. Every month, schools are recognized for the number of minutes read. We have one campus where the students read 104,000 minutes, and that's the capability of MyOn. And so that's available to all students in the district. So they do use that in the classrooms. They're used for competitions. And they're books that children love. Even on the digitalized version, they're colorful. They look like a real book. And so students also have access to that.
Okay, so then that, two more things. So is that something comparable to like AR?
Actually, it is linked into AR, so through MyOn, they can take their AR test. So we have campuses that have licenses with AR. Those do link together and speak to each other, so they could be on AR and take a test, or they could be on MyOn and take a test.
Oh, awesome. All right, thank you, Ms. Rodriguez. Okay, just yes, I'm going to give my my plug here. Libraries, they're super duper important, and I don't know what board it was before that did not put libraries in our schools, but yeah, I'm going to just interject, President Davila, that we need libraries back in our schools with librarians, and our kids need to be able to be hands-on inside of research. Not that I'm discounting the classroom library, because I love my classroom library, but you want to improve student outcomes, that's how you do it. You get kids to love to read.
Thank you. Thank you. I see no further questions. We now move to approve the presentation given to us. May I have a motion? Is there a second? Okay. Please vote. Motion carries 5-4-0 against, 0 abstentions. Next, we move on to approval of board monitoring update presentations of goal. Oh, we just did them. Don't want us to re-vote on that. Oh, let's redo. We're missing. I think we punched it too fast.
I punched it too early and it didn't record.
Yes, thank you. We can capture everybody's vote. Okay, we're voting for approval of board monitoring update presentation that we just had. Okay, now 8-4-0 against, 0 abstentions. Thank you. Now we move on. Before we consider speakers to agenda items, I would like to consider agenda item B3, announcement of required board members continuing education. No vote will be taken on this item. This is simply an announcement of the credit hours for the record. In accordance with Texas Administration Code Chapter 61, Subchapter A, 61, an announcement as the status of board members continuing education must be made by the board president at the last regular board meeting before an election of trustees. Board Policy BBD Local. Board members, training and orientation states that the board president will annually announce the status of each board member's continuing education at the last meeting before the district's regular uniform election date, even if an election is not scheduled or held. The following members have completed the Tier 1 legal update, Tier 2 team building training, and the Tier 3 annual continuing education requirements. Trustee Santos, Trustee Lira, Trustee Dygard, Trustee Flynn Villaseca, Trustee Sung, and Trustee Davila. The following board members are pending training requirements and have until October 31st, 2019 to complete. Trustee Skiller Jones, Tier 1 legal update. Trustee Jones, Tier 1 legal update and Tier 2 team building training. Trustee Adams, 3 annual continuing education requirements. We have now come to the portion of our meeting where we hear from the public. We are glad you are here and look forward to hearing your views. First, we will consider speakers to agenda items before taking action on business items. Hearing of the community, speakers will be heard on the conclusion of the business agenda. Only those who have registered by 9:30 a.m. today may speak this evening. Copies of handout materials must have been provided to board services by 9:30 a.m. today. So that our registered speakers can be heard by the board, we ask that there be no disruption of the meeting by members of the audience, no abusive statements or action, no threats or confrontations, no audible expressions by the audience of approval or disapproval. We ask we have one registered speaker for one agenda item this evening. Speakers to agenda items shall be limited to 2 minutes each. We also ask that speakers stay on topic and refrain from naming individuals, especially students, as their identity is protected under the law. but you may name your own child. We ask that you please speak directly into the microphone. The clock on the wall to your right and on the podium will count down your time and will signal when your time is up. I ask that you please respect our procedures and end your remarks promptly when your time is expired. Colleagues, please hold questions regarding any of these items until we are ready to consider items held for discussion. We have one item held for registered speaker, D1, approval of certified appraiser for the Teacher Appraisal and Development System for school year 2019-2020. Our speaker is Andrew Dewey.
Howdy, you're about to approve a routine item, one that gets approved every year. A list that, by the way, is not yet available in the public documents of people who are going to be doing the appraising. I don't want you to think about this as routine. These appraisers will literally in the palm of their hand have the careers and livelihoods and futures of those teachers whom they appraise. What those teachers did last year makes no difference. Each appraiser is brand new. Each appraisal period is brand new. And the appraisers have completed the training, completed the course, but now they have tremendous power. The great weakness of this, however, is that even within a building from appraiser to appraiser, we can have wildly different scores. From building to building, we have wildly different scores. Had a complaint last week from a teacher who received a 10-minute walkthrough and got 4 1s. 4 1s. It wasn't a walkthrough, it was a step over it, because a teacher who gets 4 1s literally is lying on the floor dead. It's just not a reasonable score. And these appraisers have to understand that they start with a 3, and then they have to justify going low or high. How do you go down to a 1? It just isn't a reasonable thing. We have to look at our appraisers, and we have to understand that TADS, Teacher Appraisal and Development System, has D for development. These appraisers will then write PPAs, prescribed plans of assistance. A doctor writes a prescription and takes accountability for if it cures what ails us. The appraiser has to take accountability for their prescribed plan. Simply saying, go watch a teacher or read a book that says, teach like your hair, doesn't work. They have to take ownership and help that teacher.
Thank you. That concludes our speaker to agenda items. We are now ready to move to the board's agenda items. For the record, let it be reflected that attachments were added to agenda items A2 and B2, and attachments to B1, I1, I2 were revised. Additionally, the board must vote on agenda item I5 before voting on agenda item I1. Agenda items I5 established the interlocal agreements with Region 19, which is necessary to approve agenda item I1 Project 20-090353- Cooperative Applicant Tracking Software. Board policy requires trustees to excuse themselves and abstain from all discussion and votes pertaining contracts that might involve a conflict of interest as defined in board policy. A conflict of interest is any circumstances that can cause doubt on the trustee's ability to act with total objectivity with regards to the district's interest. Starting with trustees to my far right and continuing to left, would each trustee state any agenda items that he or she wants held for separate discussion and say any agenda item for which the trustee will abstain based on conflict of interest requirements, which will also be held for separate discussion and vote. Starting with trustee Skiller-Jones.
None and none.
Dr. Lita.
None and none.
Trustee Sung. None and none. Trustee Santos.
None and none.
And I don't have any in either category. Trustee Villaseca?
None, and I just have to separate an I item and abstain from it.
Okay, so it's an I1 item?
I1 item 19-09-04, it's page 56.
Okay.
Thank you.
Trustee Jones?
None and none.
Trustee Dygard?
None and none.
Trustee Adams?
I don't have any.
All right. Items that are going to be held is... Yes.
Because you're going to end up with holding I-1, go ahead and hold I-5 as well and vote on I-5 before I-1, consistent with what, yeah.
All right, so we'll do I-5 first. Do I have a motion for I-5?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. Okay, so we're moving on to I-5 because we have to approve this item first before we can move to I-1, as I stated earlier. Any discussion on I-5? Otherwise, please vote. Let's record it. There you go. Trustee Dygard, I think. There we go. 9-4-0 against, 0 abstentions. All right, now we can move to I-1, and we've asked to separate I-1 19-0704 project, which is on page 56. Is that correct, Trustee Villaseca? Check off my reading glasses. Yes. 56. Okay. So it's the project number correct? 19-0, is it 9?
09.
09-04. Okay. Do I have a motion? It's for an abstention.
Motion to separate it?
Yes,
the first
to separate.
motion is just to separate.
Separate this one project because a colleague of ours needs to abstain from it.
You need a motion or a second?
I need a motion and a second.
I move to separate item
1909-04. Okay. Is there a second? Second. All right. Please vote. This is a vote to separate. Motion carries 0-4, 0 against, 0 abstentions. Now we're actually going to vote on this item itself. And then we'll go back and vote for the entire I-1 items. So do I have a motion to vote on this one item, I-1 19-0904? Second? Thank you. Please vote. Dr. Lita, it didn't register. We were too fast. Okay. 8-4-0 against, 1 abstention. Thank you. Now we will go back. Now we're actually going to vote for the remainder of the I-1 items. Is there a motion? Is there a second? Please vote. Our fingers are working. All right, we still have
2 more.
Yes, Dr. Lita. Trustee Jones. Thank you. 9-4-0 against and 0 abstentions. We are now ready to consider the balance of today's agenda. Do I have a motion to accept the balance of today's agenda by consensus?
Second.
Okay, any comments or questions? Otherwise, when we clear this, we can vote. Okay, please vote. Oh, God, there we go. 9-4, 0 against, 0 abstentions. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes for the agenda review meeting held on October 3rd, 2019?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? If not, please vote. All right. Look and see if you're not. Yes. Trustee Adams, thank you. 9-4, 0 against, 0 abstentions. We're now ready to consider items discussed in executive sessions. Are there any motions?
I move that the board approve the settlement agreement in the matter of Dynasty versus HIC in the U.S. District Court of the Southern District of Texas, Houston Division, Civil Action 4, 16-CV-01442 on the terms discussed in closed session, effective October 11, 2019.
Is there a second? Okay, please vote. Motion carries 7-4, 0 against, 2 abstentions. Any other?
I move that the board authorize the district to settle the matter of Timothy Fielder versus HIC in the 133rd Judicial District Court of Harris County, Texas, cause number 2018-48647 on the terms discussed in closed session, effective October 11, 2019.
Second.
6-4, 3 abstentions.
I move that the board authorize the district to settle the matter of Mario Salazar versus HISD in 281st District Judicial Court of Harris County, Texas, cause number 2017-18902 on the terms discussed in closed session effective October 11, 2019.
Second.
6-4, 3 abstentions.
I move the board authorize the district to settle the matter of Tanya Brown versus HISD in the 215th Judicial Court of Harris County, Texas, cause number 2018-18879 on the terms discussed in closed session effective October 11, 2019.
Second.
Please vote. 6-4, 3 abstentions.
I move that the board approve a finding of no good cause for educators to resign or abandon employment contracts without district consent under Section 21.105C, 21.160C, or 21.2210C of the Texas Education Code as discussed in closed session, and to authorize the interim superintendent or her designee to submit a written complaint to SBEC and impose sanctions effective October 11, 2019.
Second.
Please vote. 6-4, 3 abstentions.
I move that the board approve the balance of the closed session and personnel agenda, including specifically that the board approve proposed terminations of continuing term and probationary contracts, and authorize the interim superintendent or her designee to provide notice of the same, that the board approve separation and release agreements, and that the board approve withdrawals of contract recommendations and any reissuance of the same, and that the board approve issuance of final orders of contracts, terminations, and non-renewals as discussed in closed session effective October 11, 2019.
Second.
Motion carries 6-4, 3 abstentions.
I move that the board authorize the interim superintendent or her designee to negotiate, execute, and amend agreements with the City of Houston and Houston B-Cycle for the installation of a B station at Kettleson Elementary on the terms discussed in closed session effective October 11, 2019.
Thank you. Please vote. 7-4, 2 abstentions. Are we done? Trustee, still no more? Okay, thank you. All right. We now come to the portion of our meeting for the hearing of the community. We are glad you are here and look forward to hearing your views. Only those who registered by 9:30 a.m. today may speak this evening. Copies of handout materials must have been provided to board services by 9:30 a.m. today. We have 12 speakers registered this evening. The total time allotment for a hearing of the committee shall not exceed 30 minutes. Speakers during the hearing of the committee shall be limited to 2 minutes each. I'd like to remind speakers that when addressing the board, please stay on topic, refrain from naming individuals, especially students, as they are protected under the Family Education Right and Privacy Act. However, naming your own child is permissible in the course of stating your concerns. Please understand that this public forum does not allow for dialogue with board members. The board cannot deliberate or respond directly to a speaker in this format. So that each person who has signed up to speak can be heard by the board, we ask that there be no disruptions of the meeting by members of the audience, no abusive statements or actions, no threats of confrontation, no audible expressions by the audience of approval or disapproval. Should a speaker drift from the stated subject or become disruptive or abusive, the speaker shall be given one warning. If a second warning is required, then the speaker shall forfeit the remaining time allotment for the current meeting and any allotment for meetings within the next 30 days and may be removed from the meeting. We ask that you please speak directly into the microphone. The clock on the wall to your right and on the podium will count on your time and will signal when your time is up. I ask that you please respect our procedures and other speakers and end when your remarks promptly when your time has expired. We ask that you would Sean Lee Babanoff please come to the podium. Also will Jesus Medel, Mary Medel, and Dr. Fred Diaz please come to the front and seat in the reserved areas, seats 1, 2, and 3, in the order which I have called you. This is the order in which you will speak. Once the person on the podium is finished, speaker number 1, please move to the podium, then speaker number 2, then speaker number 3, and move down respectively. Please state your name when you come to the podium. So Sean Lee is not here. Okay. Dr. Medel, Jesus Medel. Okay. You're up, and then Mary Medel. There are seats in the very front, and then we'll have Dr. Fred Diaz. Then Coffee Smith and Art Smith. trophy.
Good evening. I can begin now?
Yes.
Okay. Good evening to all of you. My name is Jesus Cantu Medel. I'm the local commander for the American GI Forum, the Lucian Adams chapter. The American GI Forum motto is education is our freedom, and freedom should be everybody's business. Our organization was founded in March, the 26th of March of 1948, and is a congressionally chartered organization. The reason that I'm here is that we need to see more ethnic studies in the public schools. We need to see more Mexican-American studies in the public schools. Mexican-American courses that teach Mexican-American military history and cultural history. So that's what I'm going to be emphasizing today. With regards to the benefits of ethnic studies, Stanford University conducted a study, the College of Education, and this was done in 2016, and they found out that the attendance rates, the grades, and also the credits that they were given with regards to dual credits improved among those students who took ethnic studies. So the information is there, the education is there, the research is there that proves that ethnic studies is improving our kids, our children. But again, I want to emphasize that we do not see enough Mexican-American military history in our public schools. I would ask you to test one of your students or one of your relatives about the military history of our community. And hopefully not, but they're going to.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Medel. Your time is up. Next, we have Mary Medel, followed by Dr. Fred Diaz.
Yes, good evening. My name is Mary Medel, and I have two questions for you. The first question is about the bilingual testing that they were talking about earlier. Now, when I started school, I could speak Spanish because my parents spoke Spanish, but I couldn't read and write it. And I couldn't speak English either. So how would you test a person like that? Do they have someone that can do, interpreting, or how do they get tested? Because that's what happened to me, okay? And the other question is also about the Mexican-American history not being taught in high schools. I believe there's only 5 high schools that teach it. And I believe that Northside Strong taught it at one time by Miss Mendiola, but she no longer teaches it, and I'm not sure what happened there. But we really do need it because our students, they need to know where they came from. A lot of students don't even know their history. You can ask them anything about Cesar Chavez, they don't know who it is. Now, we have American history from kinder to high school. We have black history from kinder to high school. So why don't we have Mexican American from kinder to high school? So, no one's, are you going to be able to answer my question? Or no?
Yeah, we don't answer questions.
Well, that's fine. That's all I have. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Dr. Diaz?
Good evening, Dr. Latham, members of the board. My name is Fred Diaz. I am here today in support of Professor Medela's effort to incorporate Mexican-American Latino study component in our schools. As a former social studies ESL history teacher, I have long recognized the need to supplement the existing curriculum with ethnic perspectives in order to provide the level of bicultural identity-building knowledge required by Latino youth. It is in this bicultural reaffirmation process that student identity results in a much more positive ethnic self-perception, and that in turn becomes a renewable and lifelong source of global self-esteem. The Latino community, and by extension, Latino youth, are facing a marked increase in societal intolerance and violence. The Latino immigrant component is most vulnerable to the self-concept damaging effects of ethnic discrimination. The social studies history curriculum can serve as a highly effective deterrent to ethnic discrimination in schools. as the key determinant of what extent teachers, staff members, and peers understand and value the historical and present contribution of today's diverse Latino community. Dr. Schmoker, 2011, makes assertions regarding the role of the social studies history curriculum in focus, elevating the essentials to radically improve student learning. He states, most students will not optimally learn facts, much less care about them, without abundant opportunity to read, write, and talk, with a renewed focus on enhancing student critical thinking and an increased opportunity for student dialogue and debate on a wide range of social, cultural, political, and environmental issues. Students in social studies history classrooms may begin to formulate solutions to many difficult local, regional, and world problems threatening their future today.
Thank you, Dr. Diaz. Kofi Smith, followed by Art Smith, followed by Paul Richard Kuan.
Hello. My concerns are the abuse of power, unfair practice, and abuse of office resources and board services in reference to Vermel Jones, the director of board services, and her incompetence when Art signed up as a school board trustee candidate. He took his application in, he took all his signatures. Now, HISD has been promoting two options to be a candidate. You pay the fee or you get signatures. Come to find out, HISD has never been able to supply the petition signature form. It has never existed, so they have been deceptive to the public, misleading the public about something that they never had in existence. When Art turned in his signatures and application, everything went through. Vermel Jones told him that he did not meet the legal requirements in a letter to be on the ballot. She has no evidence to show to him and says she don't have to. Want to refer him to public records or file a grievance, employee relations give the grievance to Vermel Jones. Then she calls Art. She emailed Art. That's harassment. Who is her supervisor? So everything is out of order here at HISD. Art have reached out to you down in the villa last month when it was a hearing of citizens, and most of the board trustees wasn't here. Out of the 5, one just got up and left. So the hearing of citizens had to be over. We didn't even get a chance to speak, and we signed up. We had our rights to do what we came to do. Nobody apologized for anything. And so I'm looking for some solution in reference to what Vermel Jones did. It's not right. Or instead of him campaigning, he have to fight for justice due to the incompetence of HISD board service and the unfair practices and employee relations. How do you file a grievance on someone and they give it to the person that you filed it on, and she harass you? She wants you to sit down and talk to her. What sense does that make? We're looking for solutions.
Mr. Art Smith.
It comes a time when the board trustees are going to step up and say, hold up, man. In the history of HISD, this piece of paper that I have right here, it never existed. How can y'all allow under y'all watch something to be promoted as an option in lieu of paying the $300? It don't make sense when the deputy secretary, y'all always want to talk about Austin and TEA, but it was Mr. Joe Esparza that got involved that enforced the board service to modify this document. They was trying to force me to be out getting signatures on the document that has something to do with city council. I am not running for city council. I'm running for school board district 2. Then they give me documentation dealing with the demographics with no date on it. This is all corrupt. Then they give me the zip codes. I go by every zip code on here. I go and get 280 signatures on the zip code. That's what they provided to me. But they provided me information that has to do with city council. And no one is saying anything. All of y'all doing is being quiet. If you Google right now, Arthur J. Schmidt, Google board trustees, my name is on the ballot of HISD. I'm on y'all website today. But yet the Houston Chronicle had to do a big article on me, and I've got to fight y'all to get on the ballot because they refused to send my stuff down to the county. And I went out for 7 weeks and got 280 signatures. And then I said, well, show me where I didn't make it at. They can't provide it for me. Man, this is wrong. Which one of y'all gonna step up and hold these people accountable in board service? They incompetent. They don't know what they doing. Who gonna step up? Mr. Villa, I emailed you 6 times, and then you don't respond. And now voting is finna start on October the 21st. And y'all just gonna run me off, and they wrong. I did everything according to the law. This is not right, man.
Paul Richards Kwan, followed by Daniel Santos, followed by Heather Golden, followed by Brooke Longoria.
Thank you for having me. My name is Paul Richards Kwan. I am a United Methodist pastor at St. Paul's United Methodist Church and convener of East End Unidos. So I've been listening to teachers and some wraparound specialists in my area, and I've become concerned about the philosophy of the community-based schools and it being imperiled. I've heard, one, that HISD has a vendor process that is far too long. 2, wraparound specialists can make referrals to outside vendors, severely limiting who can serve the students. 3, that wraparound specialists cannot meet outside the school walls during the school hours to network and go to community meetings. And 4, that individual campuses are losing their community councils and limiting those who can be involved. And the feeder pattern community councils are simply not able to address all the concerns of individual campuses. I am working as a part of a collaborative on social determinants of mental well-being for youth of color in the East End, and I believe that these changes to the policy will severely limit our ability to do that work. So I would ask you to please commit wholeheartedly to the model that you've already stated that you believe in the community-based schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Santos?
Good evening, members of the board. Tonight I rise as representative of the Navarro Middle School East End Community Council, which include activists like Ms. Jessica Hulsey, Ms. Diane Olmos Guzman, members of the faith community, representatives from Commissioner Adrian Garcia's office and other local agencies, to express our concern with recent changes to the wraparound service regulations. It was 2 years ago, this month, that I spoke to you in support for the local policy that launched the Wraparound Services Community School Initiative. And as of today, regulations have yet to be posted online, and based upon the very few details that our council discovered 2 days ago and verified, the proposed regulations are going to have an adverse effect on the work that we've accomplished thus far, work that was recognized 2 years ago when I attended the National Conference of Community Schools in Baltimore, and last summer when we were highlighted at the state Conference for Community Schools, and when we had our conversation with Vice President Joe Biden of what we've accomplished at Navarro. Moreover, this new details betray the spirit of the policy, and we are most concerned by the fact that the process in drafting the regulations failed to incorporate the views of the very stakeholders upon whom the regulations will have the greatest impact. We are hopeful, however, that an upcoming meeting with the council has been scheduled with the Director of Equity and Outreach Department, who will help us to evaluate and improve, hopefully, the regulations. Finally, the Navarro Community Council wish to remind our trustees that we stand united with our families in the East End and ask for your support in ensuring that our campus-level community schools are not forgotten in this year's District Improvement Plan. Thank you, and one final shout out to my mentor who mentored me 14 years ago, Dr. Diaz, if he's still in the house. Thank you.
Thank you. Heather Golden, followed by Brooke Longoria, followed by Barry Chandler.
Good evening. I'm here to talk to y'all about magnet changes that have come forward in September. One of the things I want to commend HISD on is the incredible work that was done with the Magnet Committee. The 2 years that was done to study what's happening in the district and find equitable and budget neutral solutions. It's a great document. I've read it multiple times, even though wasn't on the committee. Someone let me read their binder. And I appreciate it. It is beautiful, it is equity-minded, and it is responsible. I'm confused as to why they aren't being implemented the way the committee suggested. This year was meant to be a year of community engagement, and talking to families and stakeholders to ensure that there was understanding of what the process would be and do a phase-in. This was meant to be phase one. There were not supposed to be differences this year from other years. Unfortunately, there have been some changes, including dropping students off the wait list at the end of March. And this has caused a lot of frustration and anxiety for families, especially if they have a child transitioning this year. And when I asked what problem we were trying to solve, the answer was business process problems, and that's fine. My question back is, why are internal business processes not being changed? And when I asked about the magnitude of the problems, I was told they didn't know. So the number of students that are transferring over the summer between schools, I did not get an answer. So it's hard to know if these solutions will actually get us where we need to be if we have absolutely no idea how many kids are involved and how many schools are involved and whether this is actually solving those problems. And so I would urge more transparency, and I would also really like to see the full implementation of what the Magnet Committee did, because it's really well done.
Thank you. Ms. Brooke Longoria.
Hi, my name is Brooke Longoria, and my family is participating in this year's Magnet and Program Choice Transfer Lottery. My daughter will be entering kindergarten, and we are pursuing a mix of magnet and non-magnet schools. Unfortunately, I've had a very challenging time navigating this year's lottery rules and timeline. I have several complaints about the lottery, but today my main complaint that I'm here to share with you are the phases, in particular phase 3. That's what makes this year's lottery unique from previous years. In what happens in phase 3, the wait list will be wiped and only available to out-of-zone students and children new to HISD. In years past, HISD children remained on wait lists throughout the summer. With this dramatic change in dates, coveted magnet seats will be unavailable to those who choose HISD from day one, like my family. Also, siblings are at risk of losing out to seats at schools to children from out of zone. Additionally, another risk is that because this program is new and it's a new policy, schools may make incorrect guesstimates, and we may end up with more under-enrolled schools. Also, the lottery is extremely confusing. I have a law degree. I practice complex topics every day. I could not sit down and explain the lottery to someone right now in plain English. This will drive families away from HISD. So I'm asking the board to please take a look into this magnet lottery, the timeline, and the phases. Thank you.
Thank you. Barry Chandler, followed by Amni Obashi.
Hello, my name is Barry Chandler, and I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak with you. Today we're introducing to Houston ISD two technologies that allowed NASA to travel to space in a clean, bacteria-free environment. These technologies will allow you the same opportunity for a bacteria-removing environment in your facilities. The name of this technology is photocatalytic oxidation. Let me explain. When UV lights, sunlight, fluorescent light, and ultraviolet lights shine on titanium dioxide, it separates the hydrogen and oxygen. In simple terms, it creates hydrogen peroxide. You all know that hydrogen peroxide kills germs. The second technology is a ceramic coating containing titanium dioxide. The only thing harder than ceramic is diamonds. CIMIX uses this technology in a two-product system to save you money and have a cleaner school in the following areas. 1, reduction of absenteeism. 2, eliminating stripping and waxing floors permanently. 3, removal of germs in kitchens, bacteria, classrooms on all hard surfaces. Reduction of slip and fall accidents. And odor control in bathrooms, kitchen, and locker rooms. Now for a few quick questions. How much money would you save in the following 4 areas? Eliminating stripping and waxing. No more crews working summers, holidays, and overtime hours, plus machine and material cost. Reduction of 20% in absenteeism. 40% reduction in slip and fall accidents, and finally reducing your housekeeping products to simply 2 items. Let us get together, explore this.
Thank you. Could you please pronounce your name?
Oh, you can just call me Omo.
Omo, okay.
I get that a lot.
All right, thank you. You may begin.
All right, my name is Omo, the president of All-American High School Sport. So I've been following the HISD sport.
Speak closer to
the president of All-American High School Sport. So I've been following HISD sport for a while now, and we keep getting this team saying the coverage has gone down over the last 20 years. We talk to coaches and we talk to other parents, and they keep saying the same thing over and over again. For instance, even the female sport, the volleyball is going on. You can't even find anything like what district, what school is doing better, the standing and stuff. And some of the scores are just missing over. So what our organization is doing is to cover Houston HISD sport. We covered volleyball and football. That's our plan. That's what we're doing. My belief is there's a lot of good players out there and a lot of good teams out there. Doesn't make sense because of where you go to or what school you go to. You should get a huge coverage, and you are in other places, other schools, and you never get any coverage or of sort coming out. So that's the reason why we started the All-American, called All-American High School Sport. We're not asking for anything. We would do this, we're doing this on ourselves. All we just wanted to do is to include the schools. We want to get the media department, they can able to go to the website. We have use our tool, and they will be able to generate a record. They'll be able to cover the school and send the information to the school. So that's all we're asking for. It's just to have a contact with the media of each schools so that they can cover their schools by themselves. Thank you.
Thank you. We are now ready to hear reports or comments from board members. Trustee Adams.
Just want to say happy Principals Month to all the principals in HISD. Thank you for the great work that you've continued to do. Thank you, Dr. Latham, for the continued growth and working with your team based on the data that was received today. And thank you, Ms. Carla, for hanging in there and doing the tough work along with the administration. Just to know that you are appreciated.
Trustee Dygard.
Trustee Adams took my comments. The highlight of every month for me is the progress monitoring towards our goals, and to get a glimpse inside of how our kids are doing, what the work looks like, and I continue to be appreciative for the time that we get to have conversations about that as a board and with the administration every month, and answering all of our questions and giving us the information that we're looking for. I'm appreciative. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Jones.
So I want to give a shout out to Dana Jackson. She's a teacher at Yates High School, and she was in a concert out at the Woodlands with a whole bunch of really famous people. I've known her for a long time. She's an HISD graduate and now an HISD teacher, so just props. She was there with Frankie Beverly and Mays, Kim, Keith Sweat, so she was doing something. I also would like to say that I spoke with Commissioner Adrian Garcia, and he does in fact support the bikes, racks that we voted on today. I called him because I had heard some stuff, and I just wanted to make sure he was on board. Number 3, Mary Medell came up and spoke, and her husband, and I just want to say that I support Mexican-American studies and Latino studies. I think that's very, very, very important. I was a member of MASO in in college, Mexican American Students Organization, and as simple as this sounds, for those of us who aren't Latin, you have some misconceptions. So I actually learned in Masaho that everybody who speaks Spanish isn't Mexican, right? And I think that's important that people understand that, so I support that. And she brought up Miss Mendiola, who taught at some school, and then I'm wondering if that's Tacho Mendiola's wife. I don't know if they're related. Okay, well, I know Tacho taught me stuff, so, okay, shout out to Mendiolas. I also marched with the United Farm Workers and Cesar Chavez at the University of Houston. I know that, and so I want to say that it is important that people learn cultures other than theirs, and I think we should have Mexican American and Latin American studies. And also, finally, I want to congratulate Superintendent Layton for leading this district, and I hope one day you're the permanent superintendent.
All right. Happy fall to everybody. I, just want to echo the sentiments of my colleagues thus far. I know Parent University is right around the corner as well, so we hope that we have a great turnout for that at our schools so our parents can understand and help support their students through some of the resources and supports and educational workshops that are held there. And fall sports teams, I went to the Lamar West Side game the other night. There was a little bit of a hold out there given some lightning, but it was a good show. And great facilities, great job to the teams and to the homecoming court that was there on the Lamar side. That was awesome. And last but not least, go Astros.
Trustee Santos?
Just to say to the speakers that came out tonight for the hearing of the community, I echo your sentiments. The community is incredibly important. We would not be successful in our schools if it weren't for the community. Happy Principals Month. Teachers, students, parents, and staff. Y'all are awesome. Happy Hispanic Heritage Month, and go Astros.
Trustee Sung?
Good evening, everybody. I want to add my thanks to my colleagues, to all the principals that do the hard work each day and every day leading our schools. I also want to recognize Ms. Lori Elliott, who's in the audience. She's one of our 2 next board coaches. Colleagues, you should have gotten a couple of emails today from Ms. Elliott, so keep an eye on your emails from Marsha McMahon and from Lori Elliott. We've got one-on-ones that we can take advantage of with them. We're also going to be confirming our schedule of community meetings. If you have any concerns about those dates, they're really working to try to make sure that everybody is accommodated. So please reach out quickly, because the first proposed date is next Saturday for the very first community meeting to review our goals, our constraints. And so we want to make sure that those dates can be finalized and we can start advertising those. So I'm looking forward to working with everybody at this dais. Hey, look, we got a full house here today. 9 trustees and our superintendent, looking forward to working with the full team of 10. We started last week with the training we all did, looking at our goals, looking at how we'll have to update them. With House Bill 3, I'm excited to be having community meetings all across this district to see how we can update those. That's going to come together with our root cause analysis, and by the end of the year, we should have a really strong analysis of how our district's doing and where our community wants us to take it. So I'm looking forward to working with Next Board on that scope of work. And that's all I have.
Dr. Lira?
Thank you. Just want to say a couple of things. I want to also recognize my colleagues, Board President Trustee Davila and also Trustee Santos. Last year, we were at the State Board of Education advocating for the state adoption of the Mexican American Studies program, and it was approved last year in front of the State Board of Education. I also want to recognize Dr. Diaz, how he articulated the importance of the benefits in terms of making sure that our history is part, it's long overdue, and I'm just a little confused. Hispanic Heritage Month is from September 15th to October 15th, and I'm just a little confused, Madam Superintendent, in terms of just the literature that's out there, the promotion of the culture. It's only 5 days away. I'm just confused that, we have some literature recently, and it didn't include our pictures, but besides that, I'm just a little surprised by that. But I do want to stress something positive. As I researched the number of courses and sections that we have Mexican American Studies, we have 6 high schools, 417 students, and also I'm just a little surprised that the high schools in my district do not have this course, Mexican American Studies, as a section. And the other piece I do want to say on a positive note, today I met with some community leaders in the East End, and we're brainstorming and we're conceptualizing the vision of having our first long overdue Mexican American Studies museum, not Mexican American Museum in the East End. So I've been working with some community stakeholders with that, and it'll hopefully come to fruition. But I just wanted to share that. That's good news, and it's long, long overdue. Thank you.
Ms. Skiller-Jones.
Happy Principals Month to all the principals. I have some incredible principals in District 2. Happy homecoming to all the high schools who are celebrating their homecomings. And that's it. And I'm the last one. We can go.
Just me, but I'm going to be very quick because the Astros are winning 1-4, third, 3 outs, and I'm supposed to be at the game, but I decided to stick around and wait for this to all be over. This is also Breast Cancer Awareness Month, so women and men, don't forget to go get your screening done. That's the reason I'm wearing pink, but it says Houston Astros on there. And for all you trick-or-treaters that are going to go on trick-or-treat, be safe when you're doing that. And with Dr. Latham, nothing to report. With no further business, this meeting is adjourned at 7:10.